like to call the Special Finance Committee meeting to order.
Council members, I just wanted to talk to you about a very quick thing, and bring to your attention. I'm a member of the Planning Commission in Cranston, and I want to bring to your attention the fact that on the list of capital projects that are here for your approval tonight, for your approval this year, is a $1.5 million Budlong Pool Modernization Project. This project was never submitted to the commission, the Planning Commission, for its review. This is a significant problem because under the charter, section 6.12, it states that the mayor has to provide, when it provides the capital budgets, projects that he submits to the city council, it states, quote, "No project shall be included in said project or program which has not been favorably considered by." So that project cannot be considered by this council because it was never reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. And I know some people don't really care about following the charter sometimes, but I want to make you aware about this aspect of it. Section 6.18 of the charter states in part, every payment made, and I'm quoting, every payment made in violation of the provision of this charter shall be deemed illegal. And every officer knowingly authorizes or makes such payment or take part therein, and every person who shall knowingly receive such payment or any part thereof shall be jointly and severally liable to the city for full payment so paid or received. So I would encourage you not to approve this project. I'm not talking about the merits of the project. I haven't reviewed it. I read it in the Cranston Herald, whatever. Personally, in regards to the Budlong Pool, just to speak as a member of the public now, that thing has been closed and open off and on for the last 15 years. If it remains closed, it remains closed. You guys know you have a $12 million structural deficit. So I'm not telling you anything you haven't already heard. So I just want to make you aware as a member of the City Planning Commission that this particular project has not been approved by the Planning Commission, and you should not approve it because it would be a violation of the charter. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Frias. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to make any public comment tonight on any of the items on the agenda? Any of the items on tonight's agenda?
Good evening.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name's Arthur Jordan. I live at 35 Lincoln Park Avenue, Cranston.
Welcome.
I'm also the business manager for Laborers Local 1322 in the city of Cranston. I represent employees of the Public Works Department and also Parks and Recreation. If I could address you to go to page 40 of the budget. On page 40, you'll notice a position called labor equipment operator. And what that position is for layman terms, that is employees that operate heavy equipment for the city of Cranston. Street sweepers, payloaders, backhoes, the large plow trucks, the 10-wheel dump trucks, your rollers, a saw cutter that cuts the asphalt on a street, the clam digger, as it's called. You ever seen that cleans the sewers? Which, by the way, is a mandate by the state that you make sure that you've cleaned X amount of manhole covers in a year. I don't know exactly what that number is, but the city's required to do that. The city over the last 4 or 5 years, I'm happy to say, has made huge investments into the heavy equipment necessary to provide those essential services to the second largest city in the state, to the tune of probably $1.3 million. It's approximately 12 or 13 pieces of equipment. And if you look at the labor equipment operator positions, you'll see there's 6. There's probably no city that has one operator for every piece of equipment, I'll be honest with you. But we should do a little better than half. And then when you look at this, we really only have 5 because you see a 0 next to one of them. It's not budgeted. The position, it's in there, but there's no funding for it. I believe it should be funded. I hope it should be. As a taxpayer and a labor leader, these provide the most essential services to the city. This is snow removal. This is street repairs, the drains. These are day-to-day operations that need to happen in every single city and every community in the state. And I know this, I've been through 35 budgets. I've been here forever. I know these are difficult times always, and you have your due diligence, what you've been elected for, to make sure that the city is operating at the most efficient level you possibly can. So I get it. What I'm asking is consider and look through this budget and see if a position that provides first line city services that this city is proud of, and I can say are as good as any in the state, because I represent about 6 communities. So, I mean, the services in Cranston are really, in my opinion, second to none. And this is an essential position. I hope you find a way somehow, work some magic, and see if we could find the money to fund this essential position. Thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to make any public comment tonight? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make any public comment tonight? Please raise your hand.
No hands up at this time.
Equipment that you're aware of that we're buying this year, that we don't normally buy. I know every year we buy dump trucks and smaller vehicles and phase out some of the older ones. Is there anything we're buying this year that is unique or out of the ordinary that's in this budget?
On page 27 of the budget, we have the capital budget, and basically that outlines what we're getting: a 6-wheel dump truck, a crew cab pickup, a street sweeper, road paving for $4.5 million, which is the biggest piece of the pie, drainage rehabilitation of 200, and traffic calming of 100,000.
Last question, Chair. Was there any talk about buying a new piece of equipment to line streets or paint streets or parking spots? I know every year Director Mason would say, we could probably get another year out of that, or we'll figure it out in put bubble gum on that and we'll get through it another year. Do you know if there was any talk about trying to budget for one this year, or it just didn't make the cut?
I think your quotes, I think, pretty much echoes Director Mason's input. It was kicking the can.
Do you remember what one of those costs, or have off the top of your head? If not,
I believe the painting machine, I believe in the vicinity of $25,000 or so.
all right, thank you very much. I have no further questions right now, Vice President.
Does anyone else have any questions? Councilman Donegan.
Hi, Director. The line item under the Public Works budget, lighting streets, it's going up by 20,000 for the proposed budget. It's also running at 92% for fiscal year 22. Just wondering what the increase is for.
I can summarize and say it was energy costs is what that's reflecting. This is-
Any other questions? Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Vice President. My question is, line item 54802, sidewalk program. I see we have a $30,000 for the budget. For 21, it is 24, there is an increase.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Yes, and this is the same for 23. Did we spend the whole $30,000 for this year, or?
Councilwoman, that's a 50-50 program where it depends if people come forward to want their sidewalks repaired. The city will reimburse the homeowner 50% of the cost to replace the sidewalk in front of their house. So it all depends on how many participants there are in the program. I can tell you to date, I believe we're pretty close to through March, we had spent 10,000 of the 30.
Okay, so don't we foresee any increase on that? That's why I stayed the same?
Again, it all depends on constituents' participation in the program. If they come forward and ask that their sidewalk be repaired or replaced, then there would be greater expense to that line item.
I had received many complaints about site work the past years, from snow removal, from a lot of things that happening. So, and there were some residents that have turned down from some support in this, so that's why I want to really know if it's like it's budgeted, or we know the resident come forward, they have this service, or we think we do not have it, we do not need the service for the resident, because I had received many complaints. I think Council Richard come up, right? We were talking about it as well, about the sidewalk. There is a great needs. So I don't know if it's maybe the communication, but I think a lot of resident needs those. Is also my question, is this fall under when we have tree removal, is that fall under public works as well?
Well, again, it's a 50-50 participation. So if the homeowner is willing to contribute 50% of the cost, then the city will reimburse them. It's a reimbursement program. So they have to repair the sidewalk, and the city will reimburse them up to 50% of the cost for that repair.
We could publicize that more. We'll put that on the city site, that highlight that program. because obviously there's some money left in this budget that could be utilized for this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Councilman Donegan?
Thank you. It's a piggyback question off the question about sidewalks. And I would agree with Councilwoman Jermaine. I know that the way it's running so far this year is probably lower than it might historically. You know, we do get a decent amount of calls about sidewalks. I know that the administration has reached out about getting sidewalk lists from us. With the infrastructure bill that was passed at the federal level, will that also open up funding opportunities for sidewalk repair throughout the city that wouldn't come out of the municipal budget?
We have not received guidance on trickling down to the municipal level. Certainly, we're following up, but we don't know that answer.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Vargas?
Good evening. Okay, so my first question actually has to first do with the communications component of it on that line item. Have we are we using line item? Obviously, I see that it's been to distribute as far as, my assumption is to communicate to the public, but I'm just curious, is it used for
Basically,
something else?
Cell phone service
Is that what it
for
is?
the department, yes.
Okay, so on that, sorry, I actually have all my notes all over the place as I'm looking through all of them. This one. Refer to our auditor. How are we running on that as far as on the $500 communication?
The communications under Department 13, under 1300, Councilwoman.
Okay.
It's running right now at 62.8% on a 9-month period,
Okay, so it's
which is
15.
slightly under budget, but on point.
Okay, all right, thank you. The other question that I have was, Mr. Jordan just spoke and testified in regards to the labor equipment, of which we have not filled. I'm just kind of curious on that. Do we have equipment currently sitting there that is not being utilized, or because we have one staff for less than what we had from like 2 years ago? It's been, I think, 2 fiscal years. How are we utilizing those equipment, and is there a high need in terms of filling in that position? I'm not saying that I'm gonna fill it in or the other. I'm just trying to get a sense as to how we operating in terms of having one less vacancy with one labor equipment and what labor equipment tends to kind of be on standby when it's not being utilized.
That question I'll have to pose with Mr. Corso. I don't want to misrepresent. Oh,
All right, thank you for that.
Just to clarify something, we're doing public works right now, and I was going to approach each individual department individually. So we would go to highway maintenance, building maintenance, engineering, fleet maintenance, Bureau of Traffic Safety, refuse and care of trees would all be done individually, just so we don't want to jump around. Okay, so just to make it clear. Okay, any other questions on public works? Okay. Highway maintenance. Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Chairman.
follow up on that,
Thank you, I'd appreciate it.
but again, it's a backwards, no, I say a backwards question, but it's retroactive. Not reflected in any budgets going forward.
Okay, but I would think that we wouldn't be completely on target right now if it, even if we charge them for 3 days, it should be below.
Just for point, it's at 74%, so it's actually 1% below, and 1% of the total contract's $46,000. So
Okay.
if there is some
So that's a
chargeback,
perfect
it could
answer.
be in there.
Yep.
I mean, such a large number, it
Mhm.
won't be a large percentage reduction.
Okay, and this went up because
It's,
just what they charge,
That's
they're
the
charging more.
if you would take line item 54600,
Mhm.
5,154,000 change,
Mm.
and add that $50,000 on the last line, 54607, those two amounts combined is the exact contract amount with waste management to the dollar.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to care of trees. Any questions? Care of trees. I have a question. If you could, maybe you can answer this question. If not, I'll have to wait. The entire budget is usually used for care of trees. I mean, if the budget were larger, would that get used up also? I mean, because, I mean, I would feel that it needs to be increased based on what I see. So do we spend the entire budget every year? And-
Absolutely, yes, we do. And, you know, if there's a snowstorm or a windstorm or something like that, we have to go out and clean up the mess after a storm. So it's always used and it's an obligation of the city. It's just like snow removal. If there's a circumstance that requires it to be done, it will be done.
Is that entire $215,000 going to a private contractor?
Yes.
Okay. So if a tree falls, do we send our own people to pick it up? Or,
Depends on the tree, where it falls, how large the tree is. If it's kind of over a safe skill level, then we'll go on the outside. Mr. Corso in that instance would make a phone call. Sometimes National Grid picks up the tab, depends on where the location is. So sometimes DPW or highway will take care of it. Other times they'll call private, and many times it'll fall on National Grid also. But obviously National Grid wouldn't be a cost to us.
okay, thank you. Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for anyone that's watching this now or in the future, you can get a free tree through the Rhode Island Tree Council tree planting program here in Cranston. If you go to ritree.org/Cranston, you can get information on that.
Councilwoman Mazzulli?
Thank you. Just a question to the administration, kind of piggybacking off of what Councilman Ferry said. We have a tree warden, right? And what does that person do?
I would have to get,
Okay, but everything that happens here, under care of trees, that is under a contract. He doesn't do any of whatever's involved in the care and planting of trees.
sometimes he would assess the condition of trees. It might be a constituent that calls and has a tree that they want removed by the city. He might go there and assess it to be in perfectly good health. I might have a situation where he would not do anything with the tree. Sometimes he'll have the tree trimmed, sometimes it'll be a tree removal. So it depends on what I'll use the word diagnosis. So that would be,
So he kind of assesses if we need to use the contractor.
in that respect.
Yeah.
From that role, yes.
Do you know who is the current contractor now? Is it a bunch of different ones or is it just like one?
I know Northeast Tree is one of them. I'm not sure if they've been using more than that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. Unfortunately, I had to deal with a lot of complaint about trees in the ward. So I really would like to know how many employees we have under only one person? Okay, so one person to take care of all the trees we have in the city?
Yes, unless there's some obvious damage, whereas an emergency basis, then it would be DPW or calling other resources. But in terms of assessing, it would be that one individual.
Okay. I have an example. A resident called me, and I refer to the administration, probably you are aware of that, where they called to have this big tree to be cut, and someone say it's the tree is good, but all this sidewalk, you see the tree, all the roots come out on the sidewalk, and this person has a child with, what we call, I don't want to say handicap, but need, special needs child that has a walker that needs to go from, the driveway to go to the sidewalk. And you can see all the bump on the sidewalk, and the tree has not been cut. So is that someone has this issue, and if the tree is healthy and you're not gonna cut it because so-and-so?
I think we'd have to take those on a case-by-case basis. I think I might even be aware of that. I'm not sure how that ended up.
Mm-hmm,
I remember going by myself.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes they'll even just shave the side. It depends on the severity. Sometimes it would be removed. Sometimes it would be repaired. Sometimes the sidewalks, if they're uneven, they can be shaven. So if not perfectly flat, at least there where the segments are, they're, I'll say, contiguous. In that particular case, I don't know how that ended up, but that
That's-
is the person that.
that's one of the problem I have to, Director, because as I can say that while we are talking here, it doesn't make sense when there is a need and we don't know how it's gonna end up. If the problem is solved, there is no follow-up. You don't even know, right? And you know the issue was.
Yeah,
So-
it was switched over when Deputy Director McCauley came in. So I remember going by last summer.
Yeah, so that's something we're still not having how it's ending up. And the side work, I don't know how we can fix it when we have some sort issue. One person, as you mentioned, in the department, and that was the impression I have, maybe we do not have enough resources to address those issues about the tree. And I went and I visited. I saw it. I don't know how we can fix the sidewalk because all those, the tree roots come out like this, bump and bump like this, both sidewalk of the house. And then the branches cover the roof of the house. And that's, you can have the sun coming in, and that's another issue. So I think maybe we can have the warden come maybe in a meeting. Sometimes we can have more explanation about how those things work really. So, yes, maybe that's the second item we can add for public source. What? Vice President?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remind me in an email and I'll put that on the agenda. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions about the trees pertaining to the budget? No. So next is Sewer Enterprise Fund. Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Chairman. Question on the privatization contract. It's down 1.8 million in the budget, and just wondering looking to get an explanation for that.
Oh, I'm not finding that.
Through the chair. Just to the Director Moretti, when you guys talk on that table, can you pull the microphone a little closer? The computer's not picking it up all the way.
John's question. Councilman, would you mind repeating the question? Because we were flipping through trying to, we have heard you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. So the line item 50800 privatization contract, it's being reduced on the expenditure side by $1.8 million. And just given the substantial amount of that decrease, looking for input on why.
Councilman, I believe the answer is that in the past, they've over budgeted for that particular line item. If you look at the actuals for the last few years, 19 was 16.6, 20 was 17 million, 21, 17.2. They jumped up 22s to 19.9. And I guess they've realized that the actuals weren't coming in quite as high as they had anticipated. So that's why they dropped it back down to 18.1.
Councilwoman Marino.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Donegan, for that question. That was one of my two questions. The other question that I had was with respect to the professional services and the expenditures line item 52016. It's appropriate for $100,000 pretty consistently, or at least, but it's running well under. And in prior years, the actuals, looks like they've been under as well. So I'm just wondering if that's anticipated to still be under.
Currently, it is under, Councilwoman. It's running at 38% through March. Those fees they use when they have outside consultants come in for a special project. So I believe it's just an estimate that they use every year in anticipation of projects going on.
Is that for contemplating unanticipated kind of events, the professional
Correct,
services
correct.
that they use it
Yes.
for? Okay.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Manzulli.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I apologize if this is a silly question, but hospitalization looks like it's going down $10,000. I'm not sure, who is it that's getting health insurance here? Let's see, is it like, looks like salary schedule went up, but hospitalization went down, and I don't see buyback. So I'm just wondering how that happens.
Just looking now, Councilwoman. I know we have a new employee within the department, and last year we probably.
Please speak right into the microphone. Okay, it's not picking it up.
Last year, we probably budgeted at the higher cost, and he probably came in as a single plan. So that's why with the increase of the 10%, less the reduction to a single plan, that's why the amounts are different this year than last.
Okay, are we sure, or is that just,
I'm just gonna, I'll check it right now. That's correct. We had budgeted a family plan last year for the new employee, and he is currently receiving a single plan.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question. The audit of city books is always $10,000 consistently, and now it is at 0. So I'm just curious why.
That amount was absorbed into the $1 million of overhead that we charged to the sewer fund for work that it does on behalf of the general fund. So we just incorporated in as part of the million.
So it's still there, just moved.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chair. My question is line item 508 to 20 capital expenses. I'm looking at a pattern. So 2017 was budget 0.
Is your button pressed?
Yes. Okay, so I'm trying to understand, I'm curious to understand what it is. So I see a pattern here. 2017, it was 0. 2018, negative $32,000 plus change. 2019, 0. And 2020, negative 800,790. And then 2021, 0. And then 22, 750,000. And 2020, the project, 1 million. So I would love I'm just curious. I'm learning why this pattern and why this increase momentarily as well.
This account is used to buy capital items. Say a truck or a pumping station or something that the sewer department has recognized that they need to buy, which isn't just an ordinary expense, but it's a capital item, which means that it lasts usually longer than 5 years and it costs more than $5,000. Because this is an enterprise fund, at the end of the year, those expenses are transferred to the balance sheet of the sewer department. So it's no longer on the revenue and expense side, but it is an asset of that enterprise fund. The reason we need to budget is we still have to pay for it. So we have to recognize the expense, and that's why we have the expense line item. But at the end of the year, anything we purchased gets reclassified from the expense to the balance sheet. So it goes from being an expense to a fixed asset. And then what happens is over the life of that asset that we purchase, it is systematically depreciated depending on the estimated useful life of the purchase. So then that's why we have depreciation expense.
Okay, that's why we saw those negative in the prior year.
The negatives in the prior year were mistakes. The
Oh.
purchasing agent had classified something twice, so it got reversed down back onto the expenditure sheet so that it was actually a reduction of the cost to run the sewer department because he had recorded something twice as a fixed asset and it shouldn't have been.
All right, thank you so much. That's clarific.
Probably a little more than he wanted, but that's the technical answer.
Councilwoman Vargas?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question as we're talking about all these funds, and I'm trying to get a sense as well. This relates to the budget, but I'm really trying to understand as I'm looking for the revenue and expenditures here on the system, on the package that we have before us on the proposed budget. The ARPA money that has come in, what is the total dollar amount that has come in that we have like on hand?
So Councilwoman, those miscellaneous reports I send every month, one of them is that report that shows how much we have spent to date. I'll just pull up Marches that I just sent out.
And maybe while you're looking for that, I'll just ask another question if I may, otherwise I can hold off, but I'm just making sure that that it's being allocated in the right, that I'm looking at it being allocated in the right line item. So is it being allocated under the other general fund revenue? Money that has been received?
No, it's kept in its own separate fund, but the total amount that we've received to date between the ARPA stimulus and the county stimulus is, give me 1 sec, is $21.1 million.
That's what's been received in total. That includes a 7 million from last year as well?
No, the 7 million is what we
No, sorry.
expect to use out of the 21 million.
The 19 million, that it's part of that 21 million,
Correct.
correct?
Yes, we're anticipating to receive another 21 million between now and June 30th.
On
It'll
top
be
of the
40.
current 21.1, I'm sorry to cut you
Yes,
off.
Yes,
Yep.
we got half of it basically, and now we'll be getting the second half between now and June.
Okay, and so when I'm looking at, is that on page, under the summary overview, is that, which line item is it being allocated into? Because you said it's a separate line item though, right?
Yes, if you look at page 5 of the budget. Just about halfway down, line item 49,500. We anticipate bringing in $19,441,000.
What line item? What line item again?
It's line item 49,500. It's halfway down the sheet. Just before where it says 1105,
41,500, right?
49,500, yes,
Why am I
19,441,000.
not seeing it? You say, I'm sorry? 49,135? Yep, COVID-19 stimulus. That's that 19 million, right?
$49135.
Oh, sorry. I was reading the wrong number.
No, it's okay. I mean, I need some stronger eyeglass prescription, but I'm still checking. So that 19 million is there. And so when we get the other 21, it's gonna go back, it's gonna go in that same line item, correct?
No, it's gonna go into that other separate fund where we have the 21 million already established. So we're segregating that money into its own separate fund. And as we need it in the general fund or other funds, we'll be budgeting accordingly. So we're anticipating bringing in $19 million into the general fund in fiscal year 23 out of the $42 million that we'll have in Fund 102.
And so the interest on that that's being made is going into which line item?
It's in with the money itself. It's in Fund 102 where the money comes into.
Got it. Okay. I'm just making sure that I'm understanding it correctly. I apologize.
No,
It's
it's
just one.
fine.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Manzulli.
Thank you. On the sewer treatment plant division revenues, I'm just wondering why the Pasturi complex fee is going down. Anticipated revenues are going down significantly. Is that from something with the state paying us or?
I asked the same question.
It's like $1 million.
I called Mr.
Mm.
Tally on that, and what he explained to me is that the number of beds that we have at the state facility has gone down. So we're only allowed to charge per an agreement that's in place for the number of beds that are up at the Pastore complex right now. And he said that based on the number that are currently up there, that it's gone down, and that's why the fee has gone down.
And you might have to look into this, I'm not sure. Is that the number of beds in the state hospitals? Is that even, or,
At the Pastore complex, yes.
okay. And do they send you the number of beds to confirm that? Because there's
I
stuff in
think
the
we
news
actually
all the
provided
time
to
about
them.
how many people are in there and how we're not billing Medicaid correctly and all sorts of stuff happening in the state hospitals, and they're building an additional state hospital separate, like a psych facility. So I don't know how it's possible. They can go down this much. That's almost $1 million. Like, it's never been this low. And I don't think we have the lowest amount of people in state hospitals right now. So I don't know if anybody else is curious about that. How do we find out about?
Again, like the other two items, you could probably put it on the Public Works agenda item and have Mr. Tally give an explanation of how the calculation is arrived at.
Okay, so Mr. Tally. Is that what
Ed
it-
Tally, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we're done with sewer enterprise fund. Next up is planning and capital budget. Good evening, Director Pizzullo. I'm good. Just want to introduce yourself, what you do, and your budget to us, and then we subsequently might have a few questions for you. Floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, submitted a budget this year, which as it stands right now is pretty much the same budget from last year. There isn't much to discuss other than staffing levels, but it's pretty self-explanatory what we've got on the page.
Is there any public comment on planning and capital budget in chambers? Is there any public comment on planning and capital budget on Zoom?
No hands raised at this time.
This time I will close public hearings on planning and capital budget. Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Director. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I know the budget or the department's budget is relatively level funded. Salary expense schedules going up 20,000. I looked at the city of Warwick budget, and they allocate almost double or about $200,000 more than we do for planning. I've asked several department heads this, so it's not just you. Ideally, how many additional staff would you like to have in the department?
I laid it out in my budget narrative with the administration. What we were well, my vision would be the director position, 2 principals, 2 seniors, 1 associate, and 1 planner technician. So right now, we have director, 1 principal, 1 senior, and the planner tech, 4 people for a city of our size.
How overtime for this year with the I can't believe with the comprehensive plan work coming up, is the allocated overtime, do you think that's realistic? Or
Well, you know, we've grown with overtime over the past few years, so it's budgeted for 15,000, I believe. That will cover normal duties. That won't cover all the extra meetings with the comprehensive plan.
so you would expect that you probably go over for fiscal year 23?
Well, we wouldn't go over, we would deplete it. So the staff would then, they can take excuse me, comp time.
Thank you, Director. 2 questions on the capital budget. I'm not sure if this is for you, Director, or for Mr. Igo. Under municipal indebtedness, the debt service is going up on bonds by about 34%. It's about 1.25 million. Is that increase directly a result of an increase in the overall capital budget, or is that more comprehensive with past year projects as well?
Councilman, the majority of that is because of the Garden City School. We had borrowed money last year, and it was borrowed as a note because it's only a portion of the cost to complete the school. So the majority of that increase in debt service is all related to the school department.
So I guess if there was, hypothetically, if there was no capital budget this year, would that number just remain the same from what it was last year, or would it not increase at all? There were no new additional capital projects.
Correct. It would remain the same because like if we were going to go out and borrow more money for capital projects in the current budget, that wouldn't occur until sometime next year. And then the first payment isn't due until, and it's only interest 6 months after you borrow the money. So typically what we try to do is borrow the money after January 1st so that we don't have to pay it until the next fiscal year.
And then thank you. The last question I have is Mr. Frias had spoke earlier tonight about, and this is the first time I have heard of this, but that the 1.5 in the capital budget for the Budlong Pool revitalization, which for the record, I'd like to thank Director Tisali and the mayor for inviting me this morning to view the facilities. That was a nice gesture, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. So going back, Mr. Frias had mentioned that project was not approved by the City Plan Commission. And he said that by charter, that money cannot be spent. So let's just assume that's correct. And you take $1.5 million off of the capital budget project. How would that impact the overall debt service?
Again, it would have no effect, Councilman, because we wouldn't go out to borrow the money until next year. So then we wouldn't have to make a payment until the following year.
Councilwoman Manzulli. Councilwoman Marino.
Thank you. Good evening, Director Pizzulo. With respect to the comprehensive plan, I believe was earlier this year, a state grant was received for that. Can you remind us as to how much that was for?
The state did not give us any money, so we received a grant which would be reimbursable at the completion of a project. That was 125,000, which is, frankly unhelpful to doing the project. We need to have the full amount to actually engage with the consultant and start this process. So, yes, there's 125.
And that grant for the 125,000, does that have an expiration?
No, not at this time. We don't actually have any money. It's reimbursable, so we still need to find 125,000 in the budget to be able to pay for the services, and then at the completion of the project, it would be reimbursed from the state.
I understand your terms. I use the term grant because it was presented to us through our grant writer, Lisa Andoja. So that's why I use that term. But I understand what you're saying this evening, which is that the city, through your department, would have to expend the funds and then be reimbursed, but you're not aware of an expiration on that.
No, but we don't even have those funds budgeted yet to even expend that.
That was my next question, is that I know that through my attendance of some plan commission meetings that you've been working on this. The last I had heard, and you forgive me, we've had some conflicting meetings, but I heard that you were looking to do it in-house for a period of about 3 months. That was a couple of months ago. You still looking to do that in-house this year?
Yeah, the process that we're going to follow is that we don't have the luxury of hiring a consultant who can then ask us 500 questions nonstop to say what's still valid, what's not valid. We're taking that task on independently with the department to go through the elements and create sort of like an alpha draft. That would be the roadmap for the consultant once we finally get the funds to hire them, that's what they would follow, and it would be a much more efficient process. The last thing I want to have happen is that we get to the end of the process with the consultant and the plan is unworkable and we have to basically rewrite it anyway. So we're trying to do a lot of that work up front, which is slow because again, it's the theme is we have a slim department and we have to handle all the things that come at us. Long-range planning is the thing that gets put on the back burner because we have to react to ordinances, subdivisions, variances, you name it. That's the things that we have to do. The long-range planning is, it becomes a luxury when we have a small staff. So comp plan has been agonizingly slow because of that.
And through this current budget, you're looking at $70,000 to appropriate towards that work.
Right. So last year there was 70,000. This year would be 70,000. So if that's approved, that would give us 140. We can't add that to the grant because we don't have that grant. So this essentially would get us started on at least that 125 bit. But the project's going to cost about 250. We've discussed this multiple times in this venue. It's a big process. So in order to engage with a consultant to actually do the process, we need to have the resources in hand.
I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Councilwoman Mazzulli?
Thank you. Director Pizzullo, to go back to what Councilwoman Marino was just saying about the comprehensive plan, the $70,000 from last year, I'm assuming it wasn't spent if
No,
you, so do you get to carry that over or
No,
does that
I
fall
would
into
ask
the?
the finance department to put that into a dedicated account for this purpose and that it would not just go back to the
back into-
general fund. But again, that's only about half of what we need with last year and this year to get started.
Okay, but you won't lose that if you ask, right?
Well, I'm expecting
could
finance to
someone
put it
tell me?
to a dedicated account.
Could you tell us that, Mr. I just want to make sure that I'm clear that they will keep that money.
Well, it depends. I mean, if they go out and they have a contract and they make a payment or deposit, then yes, it'll be, it'll be encumbered and spent this year. If they don't have a contract with somebody, then no, it falls back into the general fund.
Well, that's why we need this transferred into a dedicated account because the 70 is not getting us there. So if the 70 disappears, it's like, well, what's the point of giving 70 at all? The project is 250. So we need to put that into a dedicated account, add it to this year, And then we're still short, 40% of what we need to start this process.
But Mr. Igo, my question is, I don't want it to fall off and back into the general fund. So is it possible, what Mr. Brazil is saying? Do we do that? Is that a thing we do? Where we put money in a dedicated fund? Because that's
Again,
what he
if he-
says he
If he has a
needs.
contract with a vendor by that time, by the end of June, yes, we could do that.
Well, there's no point in putting any money in the budget at all for this if it can't be dedicated to this one goal of doing the comprehensive plan. There's no point in doing this unless just put 250 in and then we can start working. But this idea of accumulating money, if that doesn't work, then there's no point in doing it whatsoever.
I guess I would either ask through the auditor or ask that Mr. Moretti come back to tell us if that's a thing. If Mr. Brazil can do this, otherwise we're gonna lose the 70,000, then might as well take it out and we'll take out 70 more and get them another staffer. I don't understand. I'm not trying to cause a problem. I just don't I don't understand. I don't
Well,
want $70,000 to, he's saying he can't get a contract with the $70,000. So it's essentially saying it's gonna go away.
Right, but you could do a contract with somebody. I mean, why did we put 70,000 in the first place? Do we even have a vendor? Is the project, has it even started? I mean, if we have something that we can tangibly touch or acknowledge that there is a contract, then we could put the 70,000 aside.
Okay, Councilman Riley, did you have
The
something?
problem is I can't engage with the consultant if we don't have the resources. It's a $250,000 project to go out to bid and get the group we want. If we don't have the resources, why would they even bid on it? Why would they even bid to work with the city at that point if we can't guarantee that we have the resources to see this through? So therefore, it was my understanding that this was going to accumulate. We would be in a dedicated account and then we would have the funds to do this project. If it goes away, then there's no point in putting anything in the budget for this process. Another 70 is just as useless as 70 this year.
Order to DeMayo.
Just out of curiosity, how long would it take for the whole project to be completed?
It would probably take 2.5 years.
So it's my understanding, just out of curiosity, if you entered into a contract, had a factored price, the first allocation would happen and then it could be allocated over 2 other budgetary years to complete the project?
That's not ideal because we can't guarantee that we're actually going to fund the next 2 years. We don't know what's going to happen in successive years with this body.
Director Igo, if you're entered into a contract where payments have to be made over a 3-year period, is it a fair statement to say the city would at least budget the money accordingly?
Absolutely, we'd have to, if we enter into a contract, it's binding us to that amount of money. So at that point, we'd have no choice other than to budget for it and pay it.
Thank you.
And again, we could do what the director is asking. It's just we need to make sure that it's going to happen. We don't want to be putting $70,000 aside every year and then it not happen. We don't even have a contract. We don't even know if anyone's going to bid on it. It's kind of shaky to put $70,000 aside and then not even know if or when it's going to be committed.
Council President Paplaskas.
Yeah, just to follow up, exactly what Auditor DeMayo was gonna say or did say, that's a contractual obligation. If we enter into an agreement with somebody to do the work, I mean, that's a contractual obligation. Just like we have contractual obligations that are all over this budget. I think it's 86% of this budget. So, Director, if there's a firm you want to use and put it out to bid, see if we can use it. Spend the first 70, start drawing down on that grant.
This conversation, we've not had this conversation before with any members of the city about entering into agreement and then we would be contractually obligated to fund into the future. That's never been broached whatsoever during these discussions of the past 3 years.
So what is your number that you're saying? It's 250?
About 250, yeah.
So you get 70, the grant, you're almost there.
We need to have the resources to be able to go out to a company and say, we are legit. They say, well, we'll start it and then we're left hanging with a product that's useless. So, what my goal is to have the resources in hand and do the project and barrel through it. The idea of whether or not this was going to get appropriated in future years was my concern. It was also the concern of the administration and this council. So the idea that it wouldn't be dedicated, well, that's a new idea. So, I'm not entirely sure how we want to handle this, but right now we don't have the resources in hand to engage with a contractor, with a consulting firm that would take us seriously.
Well, I think that, just to follow up, and I'll pass the gavel back, I think getting the comprehensive plan done is a priority for everyone. Probably the administration, I know us, and I know certainly you, Mr. Pizzullo. So I think we need to move forward however we can. We've got probably a third of the funding, identified. Let's push through and try to get it done. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Councilman, the other thing I'd like to say is just like we talked about earlier tonight with the garbage contract, we have a contract that's 3 years. It goes up every single year. It would be the exact same scenario. If we had a contract with if Jason said it was going to take 2.5 to 3 years to do, it would be the exact same thing. We'd have a budget, 70,000 the first year, 70 the second, 70 or 80 the third, the final payment of it. It's no different than that, but we need to know that there's a contract. It has to go out to bid. We have to know an amount and then budget accordingly.
Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. I remember last year budget, we were talking about comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So we know this is important for the city, but at the same time, we didn't do anything to equip the department of the resources we need. From my understanding, what you're saying, is that clear? You're saying, even though you have the money right now,
I don't.
but you don't, if you
don't,
had
yeah.
the money, so hypothetical, I cannot the word. Okay, so if you would have the money, even though the consultant will do the project, but you don't have the resources to carry on with the project, is that what you said?
That's right. I don't have the resources to start this
So-
project.
So meaning, it doesn't matter if we find the money right now because the department cannot handle the project.
Well, there's two things going on there. The department is going to have to take a lot of man hours to manage a project like this. It's not going to be handled by some third party. It's going to be handled by staff, which is going to take up a lot of our resources and time. What I've been asking for is more staffing in the department so that we can handle other long-range planning activities. That's not, 2 years ago, I had that staffer. 2 years ago, the budget was cut by 25%. So, and we still have not seen that recovered. And that takes a big dent out of our capacity to do long-range planning. The planning we do is the reactionary subdivisions, the applications, the historic district, the ordinance, those things that come at us, where we don't have, unlimited resources to do long-range planning. Not only that, though, I don't have the financial resources to start the comprehensive plan. So there's a whole, like I said, there's a whole new conversation talking about entering into a contract and we're going to be obligated in, several years forward. That was never broached by Bob or anyone on this council until tonight. So that's a great idea. If we did it like that, then we could get moving. But, that still doesn't solve our issue of manpower in the department.
So I think it's like before we put, there was a saying, what you need right now is staffing first. They have the resources, human resources and financial resources to even think about contacting a consultant. Is that
Well,
what
yeah,
we need
well,
right now?
that's part of the equation, but in order to do all the other things that we need to do in the department, we still need the staffing, not just for the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so staffing is the priority.
Right. The past 5 years I've been coming and sitting here and saying the exact same thing, is that our department is not staffed at a city planning department level. I've been saying that. It's my 5th time saying that. And it's true. It's true. If we look at our peers, we're not even we're embarrassingly behind our peers in terms of the capacity to do planning work in this city.
Director, do you put, I'm going, maybe. I don't see you put for staffing, no?
I
For
did.
this
It didn't,
year?
it didn't make it through the bit into the mayor's budget.
You didn't put the staffing for this year in the budget?
I did. I did. It didn't make it into the budget though.
So you did submit
did-
in
I
your
did.
budget?
I did. Yes.
Can you provide us for your original budget
The
before
Well,
this?
I have what I submitted to the mayor. Is that appropriate to submit to this committee? That's, you know,
President
How much you can
Paplaskas,
share?
is that allowed?
Is that allowed? We can
He,
share.
he made a proposal to the administration and the administration didn't put it in the budget. Are we allowed to see what he put into that?
I think, my personal opinion, it's no different than what Nick Lima did last year, asking for somebody.
Counsel?
To the solicitor.
He's-
So I think the administration's already vetted out its department's proposals to it
right.
and has come up with what's presented here for you. So I think that's what is available to you to
Right.
consider.
It didn't make it into the mayor's.
I'm
budget.
sorry, can I come through the chair? I'm sorry. can
Hold
you
on, hold on,
introduce-
hold on. Let him finish.
Can I have him introduce himself though? I have no idea who he is.
I'm sorry, I introduced myself prior. Christopher Wharton, I'm from the Solicitor's Office.
Thank you.
Chair, I think
Council
it's,
President.
I think it's fine to ask any director what their wish list is. I mean, why have these meetings if we can't ask questions? That's my personal opinion. But
So
think I'm- I don't
could you
think I'm breaking
supply
any
that,
laws.
could you supply that to us? Not this moment,
No, I-
later.
Yes, I could.
Thank you.
If it's your desire. So I had said earlier in the meeting to have an additional principal, additional senior. Those two positions would be, experienced credentialed folks in their department that would focus on long-range planning, specifically long-range planning, in addition to the other principal and senior we have that deal with the regulatory aspect of planning. Josh and Doug, that they do the subdivisions and ordinances, land developments and development plan reviews and historic district. That takes the lion's share of their time. What we're saying is rewriting the zoning code, rewriting the comprehensive plan, doing all the ordinances that we want to do, affordable housing, sustainability, all these things that only get a passing glance because you just don't have the capacity. So, we had the position that was cut, the one that I'd like to see was the associate planner. That's the lowest level planner, planner one in the office. That position was in the
What
budget.
year it was got?
It was cut 2 years ago. 2 years ago. It was the associate planner, it was cut 2 years ago. So since then, we've had 3 planners in the office. From historical, perspective, there used to be 8 people up in my office. There would be 8 planners up in the office. Over time, everyone who retired just didn't replace them. So now we're at a shoestring, and that's where we are right now. So I'm advocating for my department because I'm the only one who can, I guess, at this point. So yeah, we need more people in our department to do the things that people think of as planning, not just regulatory applications.
Director, I remember last year we have a lot of meetings, people come up, zoning, changing, all of those things.
Yes.
And the one common idea or topic that's coming back and forth is we have an outdated comprehensive plan in the city. And I don't think it's something new for everybody. And the city as a whole knows we have an outdated comprehensive plan. And I do believe the administration knows that, and we all know it, and something has to be done. So we are the largest city in the state, right? Not second largest, yes. Second largest city of the city, oh, sorry, Providence. But I think we should really, our action should reflect, our words. And I feel like I don't know, I feel like the frustration you have
No, it's typical. And
I can see.
every
So
year I come in before this
you said
body.
5
This
years
is the
you've been
fifth
coming,
year I've been doing this, yes. And I'm saying the same exact thing I say every single time.
but he didn't get into us.
I did one time and then it was gone in the next budget.
So that's something we could at least add one, we can, even though we cannot add two in one budget, but once, because this is important. This is so important. So
Okay.
without planning in the city, where we're going nowhere. This is one of the backbone of the city, the planning department. That's something that is a priority. So, and we are in a pandemic, still in the pandemic. We understand, but this is something I don't know who, in what criteria it was not presented to us or whatever, but
That's the administration's decision to present the budget as they saw fit. I presented it to them, they presented to you, and I'm here to answer questions, but it's not up to me why they made their decision on that.
but that's something as a whole, as a city council, we need to, even you have something you can add?
Let me get control of this
Control,
meeting back,
yes.
okay, please,
Yes,
everybody.
that's,
I think we're getting off on a tangent here that's
Okay.
maybe should be discussed at a council meeting. We need to stick to budget questions and to the budget. And we fully understand what Director Brazil is trying to tell us right now. But we just can't go off on a tangent that's going to go on for an hour. We need to stick to the budget. And we can just, these things are all important and we need to discuss them at a council meeting. So someone should take the initiative to bring this forward to a council meeting, and we would be glad to do it at that time. So does anybody have any questions related to the capital budget or the planning department at this time? Councilman Donegan. Councilman Donegan.
I'm sorry, did you just cut me? No,
Pardon?
did you just cut me?
No, I didn't cut anybody. I just trying to take control of the meeting back. Because everybody, like
No,
five
you
people
didn't.
had their hands up.
You didn't ask me if I'm done.
Oh, are you finished? Sorry. Thank you. Councilman Donegan.
Related to the budget, and if this is too much of a stretch, someone else can take the floor, but how does, as it directly relates to staffing within the department, how does the lack of staffing in the department prohibit the planning department from dealing with future planning for issues such as housing and affordable housing within the city?
Okay. The lion's share of the work that we do is reacting to applications, subdivision applications, land development applications, development plan review, historic district ordinances. This takes the lion's share of our effort, staffing the plan commission, providing information to the zoning board, providing information to this body, the city council. When we get into issues such as affordable housing, long-range planning, there's a lot to that topic. There's an awful lot to that topic. A lot of research, a lot of ordinance work, a lot of public hearings. And honestly, it just gets pushed to the side because we don't have time with our daily activities, working with the public, working with developers to really carve out time to do long-range planning. So, you know, it's something we think about quite a bit, but we always think there's just not enough staff to dedicate to these topics. We'll present small ordinances here and there to the council, but to say that we're doing like a comprehensive look on some of these bigger topics, it's just not possible.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. As it relates to the budget, I don't think it's inappropriate to ask how much it costs to fund the vacant position listed as 0 in the budget with,
I can
Mr.
give you
Igo might be able to.
The staffing level, or whatever that was, it's a grade 27. The associate planner was in the budget. 2 years ago, it was a grade 27, which is about 58,000, 58,700.
plus benefits, Mr. Igo, if you could just give me a total number estimating with a family plan.
It would be approximately $78,000, another 30% for benefits on top of the salary.
And does that include the increase in like payroll, taxes and all that
Correct.
jazz? Okay, thank you. And if you received that staffing, Mr. Pizzula, would you feel as though you could, and now knowing what we happened upon as far as the contract for the comprehensive plan, could you go out to bid to start that plan and
Well,
more successfully move forward?
it's certainly a step in the right direction. And again, this would just restore staffing from 2 years ago that we had in the department. Yes, it would certainly help. It would certainly help.
Okay, thank you. And I see you were the planner in 2018, correct?
I'm sorry.
2018, you were there.
I was director in 2018.
This federal grant, is there someone always looking for federal grants? I see a big federal grant here. Do you happen to recall what that was for? It's almost $350,000.
That's when the city was actively doing floodplain buyouts through FEMA. And we were getting a grant, we were managing a grant where it was a 25% match for, severe repetitive loss damaged properties. That was my predecessor had really spent the lion's share of his time working with FEMA. I don't have that luxury. So
Okay.
we haven't been pursuing those grants.
Okay, and just one more question. In the year after that, there was like a significant amount of part-time help. And then it seemed to go down since then, but overtime went up. Is that kind of how it worked out? What was the part? Because you don't have a lot of part-time help now, and I'm assuming not
No,
something you really
it's
need.
a
You-
small line for part-time. I don't really know why it was so high. How many years ago?
2019 actual was 24,900.
Lynn and Peter were working with us at that point. I don't know why it was so high that year, though.
Okay,
He was still helping out to close out some of those federal grants with the floodplains. He did a lot of that stuff. It was incomprehensible without him to doing it. So it had to really be him to understand what was going on with those grants.
okay. And just one last question, it's kind of related to the budget. Is there like active search for federal, is there any more money out there that you think we're leaving on the table that could help doing the comprehensive plan work? Because I think we're starting to, and I know everyone thinks this, we're starting to fall really behind on that. And it probably causes a domino effect with your department's work and with
Yeah.
just everything in the city. I feel like we spend a lot of time here at meetings where people refer to the comprehensive plan in one way or the other and use it to their benefit. So a new one, we need one.
The grants are not, they're not easy money to go find money. You're a subcontractor for a different agency. A lot of reporting requirements, a lot of paperwork, a lot of reporting back out how you're spending the money. That the answer is we haven't been searching for those because just the sheer amount of administration for those type of grants is untenable, to be completely honest. We have the grant from Commerce Corporation, which is the 125, and that's something I think we can work with. To get an additional grant, I'm on the lookout, but I haven't seen anything that would fit that bill.
And we never use, this might be for the auditor, I'm not sure who it's for, but CBDG funds, I know have to go with, there's some affordable housing element to that. None of that can be funneled through planning.
CDBG has very, very tight regulations in terms of how you can use the money. The way that the city has traditionally utilized that federal grant, the CDBG grant, they're not mainline planning activities. Some cities do, we do not. I think we also got into trouble well over 10 years ago when we were kind of in this probationary status for using money in ways we weren't supposed to. So we've been kind of restricted in terms of how we can creatively use CDBG money.
But other cities do use it in
It all
planning?
depends. Different cities use it for different programs. I think we're we're limited. We're limited from the feds, what we can do with it. Using it for a project like this, no, it would not, CDBG would not be eligible for this type of a project.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all.
Any other question? Council President Paplaskas.
Thank you, Vice President. I have a question on the capital budget. The 2022-2023 capital budget as submitted on page 28. Was everything in this column voted on by the planning committee? I'm going to pivot back to the public speaker that was here earlier tonight.
I heard the comment earlier about the pool, and Mike, can I see the budget as it was submitted? Was the pool? I don't have the budget in front of me. That was, sorry, hold on one second. Would that have been under recreation?
It's the last one in the column.
I couldn't tell you if this was what was submitted or what the mayor submitted.
I can tell you, I mean, again, like Director Pizzullo was saying earlier, we have submissions from every department, and then the mayor puts his final stamp on it. The pool revitalization program was the mayor's project that he wanted added to the capital budget. And we've done this several years in the past, and I know probably technically Mr. Frias is correct that, but just like many other instances in the charter, the items that are in the final capital budget are what the mayor proposes to you. And again, the council has the opportunity to change that as well with amendments on amendment night. So it's not just what the planning commission puts in, it's what the planning commission puts into the mayor, what the mayor submits to you, and what you finally approve.
Well, I guess my question will be to legal counsel, and I do not need an answer tonight. Here's the question I'm going to pose, and this can be sent to us via email or updated at the full council meeting next week. The $1.5 million for the Budlong pool, I want to make sure that that is not in violation of Charter Section 6.12. Okay, and then I'd also like legal to look into Charter Section 6.18, because if we're wrong in 6.12, I don't want anybody to be on the hook for the 1.5. Want to make sure we're following the charter, doing things the right way. Maybe the public commenter that was here earlier is wrong, which is fine, but I just would like to get some clarification from our legal department on 6.12 regarding the pool and 6.18. I'm not saying I'm for the pool, not for the pool. I haven't even seen the plans yet, but I just want to make sure we're following the charter. Thank you.
Auditor DeMayo.
Yes, Director, the grant that you got from Commerce, is that grant only reimbursable to the city after the project's complete, or is it a step grant based on progress?
As far as I know, right this moment, it was reimbursable. As I didn't believe it was a step, that it would be reimbursed to the city once we're complete with the project.
So that's something we might want to look into to see if it's reimbursable when it's complete or reimbursable when you expend at least 125,000, because that also would increase with the cash flow of the project over 3 years for budgetary purposes.
No, it's not. Are you saying, is that enough for the project, the 250?
What I'm
As far as
saying
as far as I understand right this moment, I don't have the contract in front of me, is that it's reimbursable at the end of the project. Once the project is done to their satisfaction, we have to prove that we've done what we said we were going to do, and they would reimburse us.
Okay.
That it wouldn't be doled out, it would be at the end of the project. But I will check that for you.
Thank you.
Councilman Riley.
Thank you, Vice President. So I just want to get some clarity. Currently, in the department's funds, you have a commerce budget for 125,000 that can be used towards the comprehensive plan. Is that correct?
Yes, we were granted the 125 reimbursable at the end of the project. So I don't have 125 to commence.
Okay, so we can spend 125 and that'll come back to us.
Yes.
So right now you have the 70,000 from last year and hopefully 70,000 from this year. And someone needs to straighten out whether or not you can keep that or not.
That's correct.
All right, and that sounds like a pretty simple conversation that can be worked out, but it seems very necessary and appropriate that if we put 70,000 in last year it doesn't just disappear, and we're looking for every dollar here. So that's something that's very important and necessary. It's an odd way to fund something, but it's, it's certainly, we need to get it done. So, all right, I just wanted to get some clarity on whether or not that grant was already in your hands. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Thank you. Director Pizzulo, does that grant or does that have an expiration date?
I believe, no, I do not believe so.
There
No,
is,
there
there
is not
isn't?
a date for expiration.
Okay, so it's a grant, but we don't have the funds here. Obviously, you're saying we would get reimbursed.
It's up
when
to
it's
us
used.
to do the project on our own, and once we've done it, they'll reimburse us. So there
I'm
isn't
sorry,
a hard,
who's they again? I'm sorry.
Rhode Island Commerce Corporation. So my understanding with them is that it's not the type of grant where there's a ticking clock. They know that they're not expending the money until we've actually done the project. So it's been earmarked for that. So yes, we want to get moving on it. We don't want to have them kind of knock on our door and say, let's keep going. But again, it's been the issue of we haven't had the resources to really engage and do this project.
Thank you. So there's really no like sunset date on that. So my question is, are we roughly averaging to hire a consultant? Actually, let me step back. Your opinion is that we shouldn't hire a consultant yet until we are first fully staffed. And then once we are fully staffed, then we should pursue having a consultant come in to do the comprehensive plan for us. Am I understanding that correctly?
Two different issues. We're not fully staffed. Number one, we also need more staff to do long-range planning like the comprehensive plan.
Right,
So-
which is why I'm saying you're
Right,
saying
it's
you're
not that
suggesting we
this
further.
extra staff is not linked to the comprehensive plan. That's a baseline departmental need. Yes, we will absolutely need more staff when we're doing comprehensive plan. It's an all hands activity. It's just not the consultant's going to be off and they're just going to come back and dump a plan in our lap. It's going to be all hands. So yes, it will certainly help do long range planning like the comprehensive plan. Yes.
Okay. And you're averaging out, this is separate and apart as far as you having staff in. You're saying it's roughly about 250,000, but that's because you're looking at what consultants are charging across other cities and towns? Is that?
Other cities and towns who've done a project, complete rewrite of the comprehensive plan under the newest regulations, it's costing around 250, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not saying this one way or the other, but I'm just curious if we were to have that 125, it's based upon completion, but the 70 that's currently there now, have we as a city put in a RFQ, or are we just kind of holding off first and making sure that instead of RFQ, we go for an RFP once we fully know that we have
Yeah,
the
no, we're not doing
funds?
RFQ for the comp plan. When we get ready, we do RFP and get bids for an actual consultant to do the plan, not just qualifications. There's only a few consultants who can even do a project like this locally anyhow. So we really need to have the resources to be taken seriously, that we're actually going to engage in this project and do it.
But assuming we have that full 195, or we have at least that 70 currently now in this fiscal year. Again, I'm just trying to think in terms of, yes, we have these funds now, and how do we eventually seek those additional funds to fully pay off the entire project? Because I get it, it's time consuming. You have to go ward by around the ward, public hearing. I understand all that component of it. Does it make sense, or would it be a rushing project, which I don't want to also rush, because this is obviously like very, very not everything else is not serious, but this is a very delicate matter. We want to do it correctly. But would it make sense at all to do an RFQ prior to the end of this fiscal year, before the fiscal year ends, between now and June, with language that's in there that proposes some sort of funding on breakdown in terms of the scope of the work, the timeline, and the financial structure of how it would be laid out between now and the entire project? Because you're saying it takes about 2 to 3 years or so for it? I'm just curious.
I think it's something we can think about. I've been hesitant to do that until we had the resources to actually fully engage someone. I think that if we're going to get a, a good firm to work with us over a number of years, we need to have the resources in hand. I have felt, again, before tonight, this is the first time this topic has been broached, that this would be a contractual obligation if we said, okay, we've entered into the agreement and then we have to fund it. Then that has never been uttered by anybody in the city with regards to funding of the comprehensive plan until tonight. So, if that was the issue 2 years ago, and we had the 70,000 2 years ago, and it was going to be a contract, well, that's a completely different equation. That is not the equation that we were working under. So if we're talking like that, yeah, then we could maybe go to our RFP this year. If we are under the assumption that we're going to be contractually obligated for X amount over 2 or 3 years. But that's not been my assumption that how this would work.
No, I understand. And again, I appreciate your sincerity on this. I know there are times that there are projects where they're broken down between fiscal years, or you discuss the dollar amounts as how that eventually will be paid. And I just wasn't sure whether that would be something that if again, not to rush the process, we want to make sure we dot our i's and cross the t's, but I just wasn't sure if RFP would be put out between now and June, given the fact that you said that there's only maybe a handful amount of consultants that would probably do this. I mean, it still makes sense. Obviously, I would definitely RFP it. Just didn't know if that would be something that you would be, I don't know, interested, I guess.
It's possible. And again, if we're going to contract with them, they'd want to know that the funding is secured. I'd want to know that the funding is secured, because we don't want to end up and say, well, next year things change and it's not going to get budgeted. And we're left with a worthless, half-finished,
understand.
half-baked document.
Yeah.
That's why, this needs to be done all at once, with full steam ahead. We can't piecemeal this.
But even if we were to allocate the full, say, hypothetically, in a perfect world, $250,000 to a submitted budget of 2023, we're not going to pay a consultant the full $250,000 in one fiscal year without the work being completed.
No, but at least the money would be dedicated, and we would draw down from that money throughout the course of the project. That's how it's been done in the past.
I got it.
The original comp plan in 1991, the state gave grants to all the communities because it was a new law. It was an unfunded mandate. So they said, let's fund it. So every community got, I don't know what it was, $100,000, $200,000. And they had that as dedicated account for years to draw down on to complete the plan. And they had even money left over to do updates and things like that. That money's long gone. But the way that the process needs to work is that you've got the money, it's dedicated, you hire a consultant, you draw down on it until it's done. And that's how my assumption was working with this, so that we can do this and not have a fragmented or fractured or incomplete product at the end that is unapprovable by this body.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I do want to thank you for everything that you do. I know that running almost like a skeleton crew in a city the size of Cranston that we are is certainly tough. But I do want to say that I really commend you for your work and your staff as well, and your patience, given the fact we have a lot of applications probably funneling through. So I genuinely mean that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Campopiano.
Thank you, Director, for your time. I just have a couple of questions. If you were fully staffed, could the comprehensive plan be done internally?
That's a good question. What's fully staffed, that would be several more people, which I know pragmatically is not possible. But yes, if we had a more robust staff, it could be possible to do it in-house, but not with the staffing levels we have now.
Well, I'm just doing the numbers, and 250,000 to an outside firm is 4 salaries. And then again, $125,000 back once it's completed. It sounds like it could be possible.
We wouldn't want to just jettison the extra staff though when we're done with the comprehensive plan though. That's the point. So again, it's, you know, my idea for the department is that we have two main tracks, the regulatory side and the long-range planning side. And right now, that's not how it functions. And, you know, I have to be pragmatic. I understand the realities of this council, but, you know, yes, we always need more staff.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Thank you. So, sorry, I wanted to just get a sense as to, Director Moretti, sorry, to put you in the spot. I'm just curious as far as the administration and what is this something? And it's okay if you have to get back to us on it, but is this the comprehensive plan, something, or a subject that is within the mayor, I mean, the mayor's goal to get this? I know it seems like it's all of our goals to get this done, but I'm just curious as far as that 125 or a potential RFP this fiscal year or not. I'm just trying to get a sense as to what the administration's thought on the comprehensive plan overall could possibly, whether it's this year, I don't want to say next year, but realistically speaking, I just kind of want to get a sense if possible.
If we could, he needs to have the microphone. Please.
This is the first time that this level of discussion has taken place. Certainly, the mayor recognizes the importance of the plan. Unfortunately, actually, we mentioned to Jason the day before the mayor submitted his budget, one position was included in the plan, in the budget. Recognizing how tight things were, the consideration of that position was eliminated that within 24 hours of submission. So it was very much considered and very seriously considered. Realizing the plan, that the budget that you have, there's really one, maybe two new positions in the entire budget. One was, we heard a lot throughout the past year about the need in inspections. And so there was one more inspector in housing that the mayor presented. The other one was at the court, and it was just a marginal increase, taking two part-time positions into one. That was it. And frankly, Jason's position was highly considered, but it didn't make the cut. In terms of the commitment to the plan, I think some good discussion took place. And just as if we do contract, many contracts in the budget that it will extend into several years, I think it's very prudent to contract, as you suggested, for a plan over several years, but to be able to put $250,000 aside this year is probably not the year recommended by the mayor. But the mayor certainly would support contracting by the end of this fiscal year, as it was discussed earlier. So I think if that gives some perspective. And there were a number of departments heads that came forward that were looking for more headcounts, and they had great rationale for it. But unfortunately, as you know, the budget is extremely difficult, and that was the decision. And that position didn't make the cut. The concern that I have in listening this evening is that the director indicated that an additional one person will kind of get them caught up on layman's terms, caught up to some of the long-term planning. But I didn't hear there's any guarantees that you're going to begin executing the plan over several years unless you have additional staffing, I believe. That was my interpretation. So I think that should be a question or concern.
I think one thing, and maybe Director Pizzullo could speak to it, I think that what he also was saying was that he'd be using an outside consultant. So it's not that he would have to have the full staff to do the comprehensive plan. It's that he wouldn't, we would contract with a consultant to execute on it. It would be great to have the staff, but that's not an absolute hurdle in getting it done.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was,
One person or two people?
well, like I said earlier, once we engage and get the comprehensive plan rolling, this is an all hands activity. All members of the staff are going to be working on this and working with the consultant. Yes, it will take us away from everything else we have to do. Everything else, all of our other duties get mashed up with this. We still have to handle all of our regulatory duties, which is, the subdivisions and the variances and everything else that comes at us. So yes, I'm trying to, I was advocating for, the restoration of a position that was cut 2 years ago. That was ultimately what I was advocating for. But once we do this, this is not going to be handed off to a third party without staff work and staff input and staff time. It's going to be a huge lift for staff. So it's marginal, but any staff helps. But it's going to be difficult with our existing staff right now and really get into this because they're not just going to write the plan without input from the city. They're going to be working with us hand in glove the entire time. So it's not one of those processes where they're off and they deliver. Look at what we've wrought. Here's your plan. It doesn't work that way.
Oh, no one, I don't think in this room thinks it works that way, where they just do it and give it to you. We know that your
It's all
staff
hands.
works very hard and that's necessary part of it, but we also all know that we need this to be done. It's long overdue and we can't keep kicking the can. So we have to prioritize this and get it done, and it will benefit the city as a whole so that when applicants come before us with different projects, it's more clear as to what really is the plan for the city as a whole. And it will help all of us do our job.
It's never been an issue of not advocating getting it done. It's that the city has not put the resources into getting it done. That's the issue. And every year I've advocated for staff and the resources for the comp plan. So it's not been an issue that we've been kicking the can. It's that we haven't allocated enough resources to actually start doing it. So that's where we are right now.
Councilwoman
And-
Renzulli, I'm sorry.
One last thing. In fairness, before the pandemic, I know that you and your staff, but you have since lost a person. You did in fact do a presentation where you had community engagement scheduled for 2020 with actual
Yeah.
dates and locations.
Yeah.
So you were planning on rolling this out and now it just hasn't happened. So I
We
know that
lost a lot of steam during COVID over
yeah,
that.
so you did have a plan in place and I would like to see that continue.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. And this is probably something for someone to look into, but have we thought about ARPA funding that might apply to this comprehensive plan? There is, zoning, housing reform, there's all curbside management. There's all sorts of stuff that walkability that applies to the comprehensive plan that is under ARPA. If we have whoever our ARPA expert is that wants to look into this, $250,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to what we're spending ARPA money on, and we can get this done maybe quicker and, use the money that we have budgeted for the additional staff and move along and not be having this conversation next year, the year after, and the year after that. So I don't know who needs to look into that, but we have the money and I'm reading that other people are using it for that. So I don't know if that's through our auditor or Mr. Igo, but that's a possibility because we're, time is money and we're wasting it right now. So that's all. Thank you.
Any last questions? Councilwoman Jermaine, if I offended you, I apologize. I was just trying to keep control of my meeting.
Don't worry, I just want, if I saw it, I will call it out. No problems,
Thank you.
okay?
Okay, we are finished?
Thank you for your time. I understand your challenges on this body, but thank you for hearing me out on my concerns.
I think we got some important things out on the table tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
One,
One last question.
no, you know me. Director, I just want to say thank you. Council Marino said it, Vegas patience. And I see the love you put into this work. So if it wasn't for love, you would not be here. That's for sure. And I,
We appreciate that.
yeah, and I'm sure the resident of Queenstown know how much love and passion you put into this work. And I hope that we can find a way to make you happy and
Well,
smile.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
And I'll pass those sentiments on to the staff. Thank you very much. All right. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take a 3-minute break. I'm sorry, because I got to go. resume our meeting. Last on the list. Sometimes you have to be last to be first. Is Parks and Recreation. Director Tisaglia, we welcome you tonight. If you want to introduce yourself, your department, and your budget, we would appreciate it. And we might have a few questions for you.
You can, we'll probably, we'll get right to that.
And I want to remind everyone to please speak into the microphone.
And looking at this year's budget, I don't see too much of a change from the last one presented, which was a challenge coming off a awful year. I think it's an increase of maybe 150, 160,000. But I'm sure there's questions to ask, so I'm here to answer.
Council President Paplaskas.
Thank you, Vice President Ferry. Mr. Tisaglia, thank you for being here this evening. Certainly appreciate all your hard work and all the hard work of everyone in your department. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I see the new wood chips in a lot of the playgrounds, especially in Ward 5, so thank you very much. Also, I see a couple of friends of yours, I think, from your Providence days on Zoom, Steve Piscopello and Jackie Poulos.
Yep, good friends from back way, yep.
I think they're checking on you to see how you're doing. So hi, Steve. Hi, Jackie. My question for you is, you have multiple items here in the capital budget. In recreation, do you mind just going over each one briefly and explaining what they are
On the capitals of plans.
on your capital budget?
Let me get my sheet, Mike. Yeah, I got something similar. Use this. In presenting this, we're looking to get done what needed to be done first. I know the Interscholastic League and working with Mike Trafficante, there's a desperate need to get the tennis courts finished up and the Cranston West track. Those were the ones that we wanted to get done this year. Something from the past, the inlaid lettering at the Cranston Stadium will be happening soon. I talked to Rad today and they're still waiting on product. The two projects that are most concerned is the track at Cranston West. I've been told that if we don't seal that, protect that, we could lose that. So this is a sealing process. They come in, seal it to protect it, to give it longevity. The same goes for the tennis courts. There are Parkview tennis courts and the Cranston West tennis courts. They were saw cut in the fall at the recommendation of professionals that we would not get further damage to the cracks, the seams, the expansion, and where the nets are put into the ground. That was done in the fall. They are playable, but they still have another part of that project to be completed. Warm weather will help us get that done, and hopefully that'll take place as soon as we get these out to bid.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to follow up on the Cranston West track, if we don't seal it, you said that it, will have to be replaced
Well,
sooner
in
than
due
later.
time, yeah, and that's a large cost.
Do you know what that cost is to replace
Oh,
that?
my God. I thought the numbers I saw were well over $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. That's all for now.
Councilman Donegan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Director. Receipts. It's the anticipated revenue is staying the same at 225,000. I'm just wondering with reduced restrictions anticipated for this year, is there any reason why we wouldn't think that receipts might pick back up to pre-COVID?
Not necessarily. It just is a number that we've used the last few years. We try to hit that number, and anything above that would help. I mean, we are trying to rent more. Again, the revenue is what we rent out, and we're trying to get as much as we can for that. I didn't anticipate that much more. until we could figure out the situation at West also and how that rental is gonna happen. We've had a hard time getting groups there with the challenge of the facility. But we have filled that pretty well.
Thank you. Salary schedules, so, sorry, expenditure side. Salary schedule, salaries are going up about $96,000, almost 8% increase. Is that purely contractual, or are there any?
Yes, it's, most of it was, that I came across was contractual with union stuff. Not as yet, no. We will hire a part-time, summer to help around the fields.
Please speak into the microphone.
But nothing that'll affect that salary line.
And then my last question is on overtime. It's level funded again at 100,000. In the big book, the binder, it says that I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but I believe it says that it's only used for revenue generating, or when revenue, that's what it says. Okay. So for fiscal year 22, it's running at 111%. But receipts are only running at 51%. So I'm wondering why, if overtime is only for revenue generating, why that's so high up and receipts are so far
There's
down.
a couple of reasons for that, Councilman. If you remember last, when was that? Gord? I mean, just graduations alone, actually, that was on the last year. Some money has not come in. We're waiting on some money. There's some groups that rent on a season, and rather than get a little bit at a time, we do it in a bulk type thing. And those are the soccer groups that use it 3, 4, 5 days in a row. They'll have cancellations. They'll have change in schedules, which we have to adjust. So it's a lot easier to do that in volume than to continue to get money on a weekly basis from the groups that rent regularly.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. Back to the overtime, this is a specific question to something I have knowledge about because I have seen it. So full disclosure, I work at Cranston West as a coach. When we have events in the evening, there's lighting that's needed. And I'm told by the athletic department that those lights can be turned on through an app, but that there's something contractually that people from Parks and Rec need to be there for. If I'm at the track until 10 o'clock at night, so would they, to shut off a light. So I'm just wondering if, as we're trying to pinch pennies essentially, if that's, when is that, if you know what contract I'm talking about, and if that contract is up
Yeah,
soon.
I'm not sure if there's an exact contract. I'm maybe unaware of it. However, when I took this position, that was the practice. When there were events at Cranston West, whether it be practices and or rental events, we housed the facility. And what does that mean? That means opening up the bathrooms, cleaning the bathrooms, disinfecting them during the night, and anything else that goes on with the field. There could be a soccer game that was there the day before. You're coming in, we're moving the nets, we're putting lacrosse nets back out. We're flipping fields. And quite frankly, when we're not there, you will see the conditions of that field and the bathrooms. So in a perfect world, people don't litter, but they do. And again, who is going to be responsible for those fields if we're not there doing it? And that's a question where you can, people may say, yeah, they're going to be responsible, but will it happen? And you can tell by looking at the fields, for the most part, they're in damn good shape.
Oh, and I
And
agree.
credit the boys for that. The guys do that.
I totally agree. I can not argue with that because I'm at all different fields all the time, and often, I do my part and I clean up whenever I can just because I can't,
So
look at
I'd be
it.
lying to you to say I wasn't aware of some type of app.
Mm, Yep.
I've never been told to or
Mhm.
investigated to looking into it.
So I know there's lights. I think it's how it was, I'm just mentioning it because it was mentioned to me on frequent occasions that it works on lighting on all different fields. So not just Cranston West. And oftentimes even in practices or people rent those fields and it's not for a big meet or event. There's not hundreds and hundreds of people there, but the lights need to be turned on. And I don't know that the bathrooms are being necessarily disinfected for practice that has lights. I'm not sure. I know coaches have keys and stuff too. I'm not saying at every facility. I know Atwood Avenue, I don't know if they have bathrooms there. I just know I'd like to know how much money that actually cost us in overtime. And this is not singular to your department. It's to every department that has overtime, because that's a cost that maybe we can control if we're creative. And with the actuals in 2021, I don't have in front of me where John just said we're already over in 22. So I don't want to go over again. And I just like to see where we can try and cut. So that was just an idea. I'm sure there's other ones.
Well, it's something that I guess we will look into.
Okay. And then, in relation to the playground camp, are there going to be more kids this year allotted than for last year? And
It's one of the reasons why that line item did increase slightly, I believe. I don't have it in front of me. For playground attendance, and that's where we take our camp funds from. There will be, we haven't decided how many, last year we had to go with more sites because of the COVID and the pod type restrictions that were placed on us. This year we may go to less sites, but more kids. That's the plan from my assistant and myself.
okay, is the amount of weeks also
Weeks
increasing?
will also increase
Increase.
at least to 6 weeks. That's what we're figuring on right now, and that probably where it will stand.
Okay, so I mentioned this last year, but not until, the final day, because with COVID, we didn't anticipate the revenue that was going to come from the playground camp. So now similarly, I'd ask if the revenue should go up with more kids and more weeks instead of being level. If we're gonna have more kids at camp and more weeks, that's the number.
It
has to
would,
go.
it should increase some. Yes, it should.
Okay, but didn't the revenues listed as the same?
Right, and again, that's the budget that was adopted by the mayor. We can look at that. It's 8-week program or a 7-week program originally, and we had cut it last year. This year, we're going back up. I can discuss that with them.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's where we could find some extra money, and it has to be, the math is like it's real math, the kids times whatever. And that's it. Thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do.
Councilwoman Marino.
Thank you. Good evening, Director Tassaglia. Just some questions for you with respect to the budget relating to the pool. The pool preventative maintenance and the pool supplies, I mean, obviously, for the summertime, that would not be the case being incurred because it was closed. My question is, during the off-season, were there any expenditures relative to the preventative maintenance?
Not to my knowledge, they were not. I mean, my guys may have been down there doing some pumping, doing some painting, but not to my knowledge.
Is there any particular reason why preventative maintenance wouldn't have occurred in the off-season or at all during the year?
Preventative maintenance in what way?
I'm looking at your specific budget, so you can tell me. It's item 55004 under expenditures, pool preventative maintenance.
Well, in a real year, gearing up for the pool, there would be stuff to be done, like general stuff to be done. I know that's what I did at my pool that I previously ran. But with the pool not opening, that wasn't done.
I mean, I've been an owner of a pool for well over 20 years, and I know that there are expenses that come up, and it's nothing like the Budlong pool. My question to you is, and I had to read it in the paper, but I read in the paper that the mayor has different plans for the Budlong pool. And my question to you relative to the budget is, have you had any expenditures for anyone making any assessments of what is needed for the pool to get it up and running and functional, since you
Yes,
seem to have
as
made the
we speak.
determination that it's not going to be opened?
As we speak, that's being done. That report will be completed the 21st or the 22nd. We will have that in our hands. And there was an expense involved. The exact number, I am not sure. I want to say 13,000. Again, I'm just trying to visualize on what I saw on paperwork.
And where in the budget is that going to be coming from? What expenditure line?
Like, what was it?
I don't have anything else right now. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vargas?
How are you?
Pretty good, so.
Good, good. Just a few questions. Looking at the water line item under expenditures, I know it was reduced by $5,000. And in looking at the actuals right now, do you foresee us spending that additional dollar amounts that are remaining on there between now and the end of June?
I do not, but we don't know what type of June we're gonna have. Last year we had an unusual wet year, which is the reason why it's, that is still looking like that. Probably not, but we'll have to see what the next month and a half takes us.
Yeah, so it was reduced obviously by $5,000 on that end, and I guess you're saying it really depends on the weather, right? Would you be okay with that reduction of 65?
I mean, I could look at it. I
Would
haven't
you be
really
okay with the
thought-
reduction of 60, up to 60? No, I'm kidding. But, and with putting jokes aside, I did have another question on that though.
Mhm.
In terms of the program aid that was submitted in this current fiscal year, the program aid that is here still shows a remaining balance of the full amount.
So what line item we're talking, Councilwoman?
Program aid,
Yes. Again, that last year was the 20,000 that was to subsidize the camp children, correct?
it was, yes.
Right? And that was not in our budget last year. That appeared at the 11th hour.
But are you planning on using that for the students now then?
We're looking, yes, to get some kind of assistance for the students.
I thought we had agreed that that was supposed to be used for the students last year. I could be wrong. I invite anyone to definitely interrupt me at any given point, but I thought
And I
that was
believe it
supposed to be for
was.
last camp.
I believe it was.
20,000 was used
Yeah.
towards last year's camp.
Absolutely, wasn't it?
So why is there $20,000 still showing? I'm just curious. I'm sorry, I'm
Well,
confused.
It's a net result of what happened. So they would charge less, so the less revenues would go in. Instead of charging the full amount of the revenues and then charging the expense for the discount, they just recorded the playground camp net of what they received. So their receipts were lower by the 20,000. No, I don't know the actual number of how much they relieved participants of, but it was explained to me that it was net, where their deposits were reduced by the subsidy that was given to each child, rather than charging 100% to the revenue and then an offsetting expense.
All right, so we reduced the dollar amount. We went for, so if camp was $200, we reduced it, say, to 150. And so for each, say, just throwing out a number, just choosing a number, for each $50 that we ended up saving, that adds up to that $20,000. And so, but does it still show then as a positive? I'm sorry,
Well,
I'm,
we're only showing the 150 instead of the 200 coming in as revenue. We only showed the net amount. We didn't record the 200 as revenue and then an offsetting expense of 50 for the net of 150. We're just showing the revenue at a reduced amount of 150 rather than the 200.
That would be considered uncollected revenues.
Correct.
one second, I'm sorry, I'm also having another, I also have another question on here then. Thank you for that. That makes sense, because you're reducing it as well. On that very same thing, same subject, when are you opening up applications for students? How will you know?
I believe they're online on the last few days. They have been up. I
Summer
believe
camp is
so.
open already?
Yeah.
Applications?
If they are not, it's the any day. I'm sure they are. I thought I heard, yeah, they're up.
Point of information. It's April 25th.
Thank you, next week. Okay, thank you. And then as far as the maintenance of tree and shrubs as well, I think that's, is that something, those aren't all park, those are fields? Because I always have a misunderstanding between that and Public Works, because sometimes there's property
Yeah,
that
we're
Public Works will tell me,
responsible
nope,
for-
that's park, and
We're responsible for a lot of the trees on the bike path, which inundates us. Any windstorm, any rainstorm, it's a lot of work getting them down. Sometimes trees are damaged to a point where they need to be taken down. That's when we'll bring in outside groups to evaluate the trees to see if they're diseased enough to justify it. If they're on our property, we will cut them down. I've been working with the arborist. He sends us out, sends us out to look at different trees, and that's how we approach it. It's a lot more tree cutting than I thought, and tree removal.
got it. So the tree arborist is under a separate budget, but
Right.
Park and Rec
And so he
uses
usually
the arborist.
calls me when it's near our, on the bike path or at a playground or at a field. And we try to take care of them as best we can. If my guys can't handle it, then we'll call outside groups.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I have one more, just one last
Yep.
question real quickly on the, on the camp on here. What is the cost per camp?
I did not see if they changed it this year. Last year, I have not seen that. I discussed it with Scott, and the number, I believe, is the same. When we spoke, I thought we were keeping it the same as last year.
And with the, oh, she has a question.
It's all, first child, all 6 weeks is 750,
Yeah,
or
there's
per
different-
week, it's 150.
Okay, and so are we taking in, just for revenue purposes, kind of, I think that was question was kind of asked earlier, are we taking the same number of camps, or did you say we're increasing that?
No, this year, like I said, last year, we had to have multiple camps because of the virus.
Right.
And we had to have certain pods, and kids stayed in those pods all the time. They couldn't mingle. Now we're thinking to less sites, but more kids per site. And the camp should increase number-wise. It
So
will
would
increase.
that be a problem in terms of busing? Because sometimes there was field trips.
No, it actually will work out better having the kids in one spot rather than having them at 4 or 5 different facilities.
Okay,
Smaller groups in more facilities, but larger groups now in less facilities.
and then on the capital project, there's definitely no funding then at all that's being allocated towards any parks other than, like on the eastern part, other than Park View Tennis Court? Is that the only park on that side?
Fay
Well, and then
Field,
Fay Field, I
had
think the
put
lighting,
something
that's
in
it.
For Fay Field, to try to make that a baseball complex. The stadium. Then I didn't even look at the last.
I saw it on there. I'm just trying to advocate for a forward one and kind of get a sense as to how, what we're doing there. I know you mentioned the ceiling for the tennis courts, but I know the tennis courts were done on Narragansett Boulevard. That project was fully done and sealed, right? That one doesn't need a ceiling, correct?
That's in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman, on an out year was the Doric courts that I'm considering redoing.
Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you. To piggyback on what Council Vargas said, I don't know if it's appropriate to mention, but I'm looking at the budget. I don't see anything in terms of for Doric Park. And as we see, the poll will close for 3 consecutive years. And I remember I sent an email to your director about the needs, for example, for Doric Park, tennis court benches that are in really bad shape. So I don't foresee, maybe there is a line item that can cover those expenses for this playground. So we know we talk about the basketball court, the benches, and the tennis court. All of those, I know those are expensive. but I don't know, maybe you can please help me to see in this budget if there is a line item that will address those needs in Ward 2 as well.
Again, I have Doric in there in an out year. Playground projects, if they're that in need, then it's something we can look at our capital plans to do. Money we have in existing bond money. Those Doric courts were state funded, so before, I still have to find out how that works when they were built. Someone was telling me they were funded by the state, and I don't know if there's work that can be done there and how that has to take place. Because it was federal money, and I'll look into that.
My other question is about uniforms. And I see an increase on uniforms, so I would like to have a little explanation. Who wear uniform? Who are they?
The uniform line item, I kept the same as last year. That increase had to be something that was done to accommodate increase in costs. It's the only thing I can come up with.
What the uniform is for? Is that,
The employees within park, yeah, they get a stipend every year to buy their uniforms, their shirts and their pants and their shoes. It's contractual.
okay. Okay, so they are not they are contractor or,
Yes.
okay, so that the stipend, the increase for the stipend? Or we have more? Do we have more employees or we just the increase for
There
stipend?
was an increase in the amount they received this year per the
Okay.
contract.
Okay. My next question is for those who don't, even though I saw the article in Concern Herald, so would you explain a little bit what is planned for the Woodland Pool? Even Council Marino touched upon that, but
The plans are to see if we can get it up and going in what way. The mayor's plans and, you know, when in talks with myself is to modernize it. Again, the feasibility report will be out this week. I will share it with all of you. If you guys would like to take a visit to the pool with this report in your hand, I'd more than appreciate it. Maybe council president could set that up. I'm available at any times. It doesn't have to be a Saturday. It could be daytime, nighttime. It's something that you guys should see. It's a lot. And I haven't even seen the report myself. I'm just, you know, taking the gentleman down there. I was down there today. And again, there's a lot of questions there.
my last question is the $101,000 budget we had on 2020, have that money expand?
Could you repeat that question, please, Councilwoman? Yep. It was before me, but I don't think that was spent. That was spent? Oh, that was the actual? Okay. But that was in 2020, correct? Yeah. I was not here at that point.
Which would have been July, August of 19.
Right.
Councilwoman Marino,
Thank you.
were you done, Councilman Jermaine?
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Councilwoman Marino.
Thank you. I'm not sure through the chair if Director Sagala, Director Moretti might be better suited to answer this question. But with respect to the budget and the Budlong pool, has there been any outreach to see if we could have a public-private partnership in terms of funding, helping to fund that pool? I know I can envision something like what we do is where we would get corporate sponsors or private companies to maybe put up advertising along the fence or different, locations to help offset the cost while we would still be providing a significant benefit to the community by keeping that open.
Are you talking to get it open or once it is open to support it?
Both.
It's something we can look into. I've never done that since my time here. It's always a good way to raise money. It's something we can look into.
All right.
I don't know if that's gonna help our immediate situation, but long-term, it's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Chairman. Earlier, I think it might have been said that the consultant was paid out of bond money. So we're going to be paying, is that correct? We're going to be paying interest on $13,000 for a consultant?
We haven't received a bill yet, but if it did, it would be part of the whole project. It's not just the 13,000 for the consultant, it's all the other associated costs that go along with it. And they'd all be grouped together as part of the pool renovation.
That hasn't been approved by anyone.
No, it hasn't, no. And like I said, Councilman, nothing's been paid either. We haven't even received any invoices.
I guess he's not doing it for free. He's going to get paid, right?
Yes, and if we can't pay it out of the capital, we could certainly pay it out of the general fund operating account.
Councilman Donegan, are you done? Councilwoman Renzulli?
I just, and this might not be an answer I could get today, but Director Chesalia, could you find out, because I don't see it listed, how many kids are going to be accepted into camp this year? Because it says first come, first serve, but doesn't have a cap listed. So I'm curious, for my own kids, but in general.
Tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you.
Council President Paplaskas?
Thank you. First, Director Tassaglia, thank you for your invite to come and look at the pool. I certainly will take you up on that. And I suggest any of us, I'm not going to schedule a formal meeting, just email the director. I know everybody's schedule is busy with all the meetings we've been having, but I'll certainly reach out to you and come take a look at it.
I would like us to have the report in hand first. I think it would help all of us.
What was the date you'll have that report back?
He had said the 21st or the 22nd.
Okay, as soon as you get that, just flip it to Rosalba and she'll disseminate it to all of us. So right now, the plan is to not open the pool this year or wait till see with the report?
Feasibility report. See
Okay.
how he's gonna guide us, and then it's up to the administration, myself, and anyone else to direct. Again, from the naked eye, it's not a good sight, all right, from what I'm hearing, but
Okay,
who knows? This is why we're having a feasibility report.
okay. My next question to pivot. First of all, I hope the kids can have somewhere to swim. I'll just say that. I'll pivot away from that to snow. We had a tough year with snow this year. I know your department helps out when we have to remove snow. Sidewalks are certainly an issue. I think your department has a machine or two that is used specifically for the sidewalks. Do you think what you have is adequate or do you need more machinery? Did you have any issues this year not having equipment to get the job done?
No, not unless it broke down, but we always have backups. We're pretty good. I mean, and we're always looking to get new equipment and new gear. And if we could get another one of those units, it's just a matter of, getting people out there to use them.
Do you have one or two skid steers to clean the
I
sidewalks?
believe one.
You have one?
Yeah.
Okay, if you got another one, would you have the manpower and the trailer and everything to put it on, or do you need the
I'm
whole?
sure we could get it done.
Okay,
I'm sure we could get somebody to do that.
thank you.
Director Tisaglia, I have a few questions for you. First one is in reference to revenues. I find it almost impossible to believe that we're still looking at half of what we had 4 years ago. So, are you familiar with the term sandbagging? I mean, are we collecting all the money we should be collecting? We're only looking at $225,000 when 4 years ago we had over $400,000 in revenue. So I would appreciate it if you really would take a deep look at making sure we're charging everything we're supposed to be charging and we're collecting all the money we're supposed to be collecting. We have another turf field that we're renting out more and we're not seeing an increase in revenue. So like one of the reasons why everybody agreed to have another turf field was because we were going to pull in all this money because we had another turf field to rent out to all these soccer teams. So I just can't understand why the revenue is still only 225.
Yeah, there's money that should be, that will be coming in. I know we're collecting some of it, like I said, from the large groups. We get that in bulk sums to change during the season. They cancel games, schedule games. The revenue aspect, you gotta remember that number there from a few years ago included the Budlong pool, which I guess is a substantial number when you think of the kids that go in there on a daily basis.
Mr. Igo, do you know what the number for the pool would be offhand, a roughly estimate? I thought it was about $30,000 or $40,000.
Honestly, I don't know, Councilman. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Again, I'm just trying to,
All right.
to try to answer on why.
But still, we're only looking at half of what we had 4 years ago. My second question is, I was walking my dog yesterday and I noticed that a private landscaping company was cleaning Sherman Avenue Field. Where does that fall under? What line does it fall under your expenses here? I'm just curious.
Tree and shrub, which would be,
That would fall under tree and shrub? So how often do we use private companies to clean the parks?
when we can't handle it or when there's too much to be done. If our guys are on the fields or if we're lining fields and doing other work and people call for monuments and or open spaces, parks to be cleaned, we will sub that out.
Do we have a number of what we pay to private landscaping companies to do cleanups, Mr. Igo?
In the current budget that we're in right now, we've spent $57,459.
To outside companies to do cleanups, okay. My next question, why are we spending more money on fertilizer when we actually have less grass to fertilize?
For the next year coming up, what I put in for this year,
Yes,
fertilizer is off the wall as far as prices and the way it's been skyrocketing. There's research done. Numbers I don't, but you can ask anyone. Fertilizer is a big increase in the cost from last year.
and with the money that we were spending on Roundup for the bike path, which was about $10,000, is that in that fertilizing number?
I can't,
Was it ever taken out?
I can't answer that.
Okay, so I would imagine that the number should be lower if we're actually cutting less grass. And my last question would be,
But not necessarily if,
if the price went up,
prices
I
are going
understand,
up.
okay. And my last question would be, do you feel that we need to turf the two baseball fields at West and what was the other field at Cranston East? Do you think that that's something that has to be done for the youth in this city to play baseball? Do we need to spend $925,000 in the capital budget to turf those fields? Do you think that's something that has to be done right now?
I think it should be done. The trend is everyone's going turf. North Providence is putting an infield in. The amount of games we lost last year in practices due to the water and standing water and fields, not one day on the day of the rain, sometimes 1 and 2 days later. And this is after we're trying to pump water off the field, drag it and get it set up. Is it all year? No, but there's a substantial amount of games and practices that are lost due to rain.
Do we lose revenue because of those games or do we just make them up on another day?
It depends. If I have open time, they can be made up. Not many of them are made up. A lot of seasons were cut short last year, their games, because we just ran out of time with the weather to play.
Okay, thank you. I have no other questions. Council President Paplaskas?
Just to follow up on questions I were just asked, Director Saglia, if those fields get turfed, what's the plans to secure them? I mean, they're $1 million investments.
Well, they would be, that would be secured.
Are those fields locked now?
This time of year during baseball season, yes, we like to lock it.
Fay Field is locked too?
Fay Field is locked.
Because I wouldn't want to see a field get turfed that would be taken away from neighborhood kids that can go there and play during the day.
That's a discussion for all us to have then. I thought it was more of a improvement to that field, to that whole neighborhood. It gives the opportunity to kids to play into the night, and I think it would be a good thing for the city.
Yeah, I think I think the lights, absolutely, certainly the turf is something that I need to think about more myself personally. If it's gonna be a big win for the city, I just worry about the concerns that, that we see at just Cranston West. You see it, people jumping the fence and going on the fields and, it's, we don't want to invest a lot of money. If we pay for it for 30 years and not even get 10 out of it. So that's my concern. Thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Manzulli.
Thank you. To the point of increasing revenue, renting out the turfed field at West, Mr. Gisaglia, would you say that the high school and that using the field and the track affects the rentals because they use them for free? So I know that they use them often now because
Yes.
lacrosse is their track. They can't be there at the same time because of injuries and insurance and all that.
Yeah, somewhat. If you remember last year, I was trying to schedule them directly after you guys, after the track, and there was a lot of situations where it didn't mix. This year I told Frank and I said, look, I am going to make sure that there's a timetable in between you guys. So that's how I try to treat that. A lot of people don't like renting there because of the parking and the situation getting into the facility and out of the facility. If you've ever been to a Friday night football game, you know what I mean. Thank God for my workers that monitor Metropolitan Ave in Phoenix, or we'd have some other issues to worry about. It's not the most friendly place to go as fans and or players. I mean, normally you go to a field, they all park and they walk in together. You could come in that place from 4 different areas. But we can rent it. It's just, yeah, it's tough to schedule.
And just to, going back to the turf field and the bond, Councilman Donahue, let me look at his computer to look at the capital budget portion. I see like 3 items for baseball, and I'm just curious why there's nothing for softball and how, there's a lot of stuff for the boys and there's not a lot of stuff for the girls. So I'm just wondering if that was considered in doing this.
It wasn't considered in softball. I mean, the complex at Brayton, as we speak, is having some work done to it, infield work. I can't tell you why we didn't discuss anything to do with softball.
So is that something that could be put under discussion? Because I
And
just
what we
wanted to
look-
be equitable for
what
the
we-
girls.
What were we looking?
playing
for?
sports
What was
too.
what was in question?
I just see is it 3 baseball fields? Lighting.
Oh, it's
Turf
not
field.
something that needed to be done. It was just something that can be. done.
I'm not particularly involved in softball. I just noticed that there's
Okay.
3 items for baseball and none for
It
softball.
wasn't
So,
done by any intent.
oh yeah, no, I wasn't trying to insinuate that either. I was just trying to bring it to light that perhaps that could be visited under the bond, especially because it's bonded out and,
Right.
that takes up, women are 51% of the city. So that's just important to me to be looked at. Thank you.
Councilman Donegan, did you have a question?
I didn't, but I'll say what's on my mind. So thank you for the floor.
As long as it
Um,
pertains to the budget.
It does. As I'm sitting here looking at the capital budget as well, a lot of the projects on here are mostly for the people that will benefit are people that are paying for leagues, participating in leagues. And I'm just wondering, when we think about, well, if it's a baseball field, it's probably not going to be used by women as much as it as it would be by men, but also, so when we think about what we're doing with our capital funds, who is going to benefit from them? And is it possible to find projects where, we're revitalizing parks that already exist, where the public can access them freely? I see Doric Park on here, or, Friendly Park in Ward 1, or down off of Whipple Ave and Depot in Ward 3. Just thinking about projects where the city as a whole, they're open and accessible to the public, and they're not, someone doesn't have to pay to be in a league to practice on those facilities that the city is investing in.
I mean, quite frankly, when putting together, I wasn't looking at it like that point. I just was looking at the needs that I thought could enhance the city, and some glaring things that I've seen over the years. Get some ideas from people, talk to administration. By no means was it, an intentional thing to eliminate those type of activities.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm asking. It just, for the future, something that we can maybe think about.
Councilwoman Marino.
Thank you. To some of the points that were made earlier with respect to the turf and the budget, it is a big expenditure. And there's also something else that maybe some of us have heard. I know I have, and I share in the sentiment. I much rather have my kid roll around and play in good old fashioned dirt and mud than playing on plastic. I'm just saying, it's, sometimes simplistic is a lot better, and it will save us a lot of money. Thanks.
Thank you.
Want to wrap it up? Councilwoman Jermaine?
Thank you, Chairman. I asked the question earlier, but I still feel in my heart that to piggyback to what Council Donegan says, I feel like in this budget, really, what to left behind is left behind. So the spring is here. We have Doric Park that has a tennis court, basketball court, really in bad shape. I have to come back again. And I really, in your answer, I don't really see how something will get done for the resident that use this area. So that can go play basketball, that can go play in the park, that can go play tennis right there. The one that serve the whole Ward 2. And in addition, they don't have the pool. And my question is regarding the pool right now. As you always, not always, already have an agency looking at that will give us a report, right?
I'm sorry.
So
Councilwoman.
the agency that you hire, you have a word or a contract with an agency. So so you already have a contract with an agency, right?
An engineer architect, yes.
So what has been concluded with this agency? Is that something that already what is the outcome? So how you gonna pay them, and what's the deal?
I'm still waiting for the feasibility report. Councilman Donegan can attest, he heard the gentleman speak. It wasn't in major detail. He spoke in bits of what he saw going on, but a total report will be compiled. I mean, it didn't sound all that positive, I can tell you that.
My question is, would it be fair if we do not have different perspective? Because if we have only one agency that will, with the idea, if they can do the work, I'm afraid if it's not gonna bias the report. So do we look at different perspective in that regard?
And have another feasibility report, you mean? I don't know if that's even appropriate in a budget wise. I mean, to do two, I'm not sure. We can look into it, but a feasibility report, I'm comfortable with the company. I mean, they're an honest company, a good company, and I don't even know why that's coming into question.
Okay, and if, for example, do you have a word if this budget, not budget, this report has not been granted to them to do the work, what would happen?
The report they give me next week,
Yes,
after that report, that has nothing to do with awarding a job. This is just him giving me the information it needs to either open this pool or not open this pool, and what can be done to get it done, and in what timely fashion.
okay, how are we going to pay them for this report?
We went through that with, that was when Mr. Igo was saying that if it's not with the bond money, it could be with the general fund, right? General fund.
How much it costs?
I believe it was 13,000. I could be wrong. I'm just looking, trying to visualize the, the invoice.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to be clarified in my head what is being done. Oh, thank you. So I will send you an email, even though it's not in the budget, but I think this is something that's to be done for Dole Park.
Are we done? Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Mr. Director Tisaglia, a lot of questions, but we're under a strict budget here. We're looking to do the right thing, so nothing
understand.
personal.
I understand.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Mr. Igo, thank you for all the time that you put into this and the help that you've been. The reports you send us are very valuable on the expenses, so thank you. I guess I'm looking for a motion to
Motion.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Rose.